The three shadow banks. Shadow banks is kind of a more, casual term, but it is a commonly used term. But the shadow banks, these are Wall Street asset managers. I've certainly mentioned them before, but I've never talked about the big three together as an entity. These numbers maybe this is the first time someone's actually taken the time to factor in all these numbers and actually figure this out. But the big three asset managers, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, are the largest shareholders of 438 out of the 500 largest corporations, companies in America on Wall Street, the S&P 500. Let me say that again. BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, and I assume you've heard of BlackRock before. Vanguard and State Street maybe mentioned a little less. Those three are the top shareholders of 88% of the largest corporations in America. And if you've been following my stuff, if you pay attention to my shows at all, then you've probably heard me say that we live in inverted totalitarianism ruled by the anonymous corporate state. Yes, we have the puppets at the top. We have the Donald Trumps and the Joe Bidens and all these clowns in Congress that change very little of the operating systematic machinations of this country. And who is above them? Who's really pulling the levers? Well, it is the richest people in the world and the richest corporations in the world. And I've said that many times. But what I and most talk about a little less is of those corporations, of this inverted totalitarian system, there is three that are the biggest shareholders of almost all of them, which is crazy. That level of reducing it all down to a tiny dark core of disgusting, soulless, parasitic psychopathy is kind of amazing that it's been reduced to that small an amount. It's from Cambridge University Press. I have not had time to read the entire article, so I may have to bring you a segment two in a few days where I bring even more details about this, but it's the hidden power of the big three. Since 2008, a massive shift has occurred from active toward passive investment strategies. The passive index fund industry is dominated by BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, which we call the big three. We comprehensively map the ownership of the big three in the United States and find that together, they constitute the largest shareholder in 88% of S&P 500 firms. In contrast to active funds, the big three hold relatively illiquid and permanent ownership positions. This has led to opposing views of some saying, oh, that means they don't have as much shareholder power because they can't just pull out all their shares. But that's like saying the owner of a business doesn't have a lot of power because he can't leave, or if he did, the business would collapse. I think Elon Musk has a lot of power at Tesla, even though if he left, it's quite possible Tesla would have a lot of trouble. Just because they can't pull out their shares at a day's notice does not mean they don't have immense control over these corporations. And then they say in this abstract that there's others who say that it actually gives them a stronger incentive to manipulate the corporations that they are the largest shareholders of because they're the largest shareholders of them and they can't get out. Meaning their goal is to manipulate these corporations to make them the most money and to manipulate the government and the country to make the most money. And BlackRock, I haven't done research on all of them, and some things are more secretive than others. They obviously have a massive incentive to manipulate these corporations, to move them to their own ends in order to benefit them because they're the biggest stakeholders and they can't get out easily. They can't just sell their shares tomorrow. Through an analysis of proxy vote records, we find that the big three do utilize coordinated voting strategies and hence follow a centralized corporate governance strategy. Moreover, the big three may exert hidden power through two channels. First, via private engagements with management of invested companies. What? You think they'd meet up with them privately? You think they might have a phone call? You think a one-sentence text from the head of BlackRock, Larry Fink, which, as I mentioned, means detestable person in the dictionary. Do you think a one-sentence text from him to the head of Comcast doesn't have influence over Comcast? Of course it does. Of course they influence. I mean, that's how corporate America works. No, no, no. They just invest heavily in these companies and they say, look, we are hands off. Sure, we own the largest stake of Exxon Mobil or some shit, but we're never going to have any say. Look, that would be unethical, honestly. That would be unethical. So they say they have hidden power through private engagements, but also because company executives could be prone to internalizing the objectives of the big three. What? You think there's a little bit of, not self-censorship, but, self-alteration of the company to move towards what BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard want you to do? Fucking yeah, of course there is. Yet again, this is how capitalist systems work. They own 438 of the 500 S&P 500. These 400 co-owned corporations account for 82% of S&P 500 market capitalization. So the amount of money is 82%. Large companies where the big three are not the main shareholders, are typically dominated by private individuals. So yeah, their point is that there are some companies where these big three, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, are not able to be the biggest shareholders because things like Google, the biggest shareholders are the creators, Sergey Brin and Larry Page. Berkshire Hathaway, the biggest shareholders, Warren Buffett. Amazon, biggest shareholders, Jeff Bezos. Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. Walmart, Walton family. Oracle, Larry Ellison. Comcast, Roberts family. Although in a lot of these, if you look up the biggest shareholders of, for example, Comcast, biggest shareholders of Comcast, you're going to find Vanguard, BlackRock, and Capital Research and Measurement Company. So they're the biggest shareholders possible outside of the family that created it or owns it, and you look up biggest shareholders of Alphabet and you get BlackRock, State Street are the top two. 355 million. State Street has 190 million. So this allows them to exert, of course, massive pull on these corporations. But you can do this fun little game yourself if you want to see how insane this is. Go ahead, do it yourself. Type them in, see what you find. These things are immense. They're called shadow banks. They are the ones that actually rule our systems. This does not mean that they're deciding every decision of these corporations, but it means these corporations are not going to go against what would be positive for BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. Something else to know is that it gets perhaps even worse because you look at biggest shareholders of BlackRock and you get Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street. So the biggest shareholders of BlackRock are Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street. These people, it's a giant circle jerk. They own trillions of dollars in assets, and they own our system. I think that basically Vanguard is more secretive in order to cover up the fact that these big three own each other. And to not get to the bottom of who the actual people are. I mean, we know that Larry Fink, for example, is the CEO of BlackRock, but we don't know perhaps who the biggest owners within, like individual owners within these companies are. Another thing you should know is that Biden is intimately connected with BlackRock, the Biden administration. There are former BlackRock people within the Treasury Department, within the Biden administration. For one, they point to former executive Eric von Nostrand joining the Treasury Department back in 2022. But that's just one of many. You go, okay, BlackRock is in bed with the Biden administration. I guess that means Trump is outside of all this, right? One of the biggest donors of Trump is Blackstone. The Blackstone CEO, Steve Schwarzman, has said he has announced that he's backing Trump and is one of the biggest donors to Trump. He was also one of the biggest donors to Trump last time around when Trump won the election. And Blackstone is the largest landlord in our country. They're buying up all the houses and jacking up all the rates. So that's part of the reason. I mean, part of several reasons that all of the housing prices are going up like crazy and making it impossible to own a house. That's Blackstone. So good guys. They also bought Ancestry.com. So they own your DNA if you ever signed up for Ancestry. Although here's the thing is because someone related to you probably at some point signed up to Ancestry.com, they own your DNA whether you wanted them to or not, because they have at least the DNA of your cousin, and therefore they essentially own everybody's DNA because they bought Ancestry.com. So that's fun. Good job, everybody, sending in your fucking spit or blood sample to Ancestry.com so you can look at a piece of paper that says, oh, I came from the Vikings. Yeah, Blackstone, one of the biggest supporters of Trump. Guess who owns Blackstone? Largest shareholders. Any guesses? BlackRock Vanguard. BlackRock is intimately connected with Blackstone, hence the names. I think Blackstone, if I have it right, I think Blackstone was kind of a spin-off of BlackRock, or started by a former BlackRock person. But anyway, so therefore, these big three own corporate America, have control over corporate America. They have control over the Biden and Trump administrations. They have control over U.S. policy. They have the control over the Treasury Department. And most of this is done behind closed doors. I mean, yes, I'm talking about it here now, but I am, relatively speaking, a tiny, tiny platform. And there are others who occasionally mention it, but that won't come close to, regular mainstream media coverage. And of course, they would never do that because guess who owns their parent companies? Like Comcast, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. So they're not going to be talking about this on a regular basis. Of course, not to mention they're in the job of propaganda for the empire. So why would they suddenly go against that and reveal what the empire is?